All right, I'm supposed to start this thing.
Yep.
Hi, everyone, again. Thank you for joining us. We are a podcast panel full of random podcasters, all female up here.
Yeah.
Woo! Kind of proud about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's great representation, so I'm here for it.
So why don't we start off by introducing ourselves, our pronouns, and we'll start with just what your podcast is, and then we'll later go on into and what your podcast is about. Yes.
Okay. My name is Sarah. My pronouns are she, hers. I run a podcast called First Years, which is a literary deep dive into the Harry Potter series for adults that are reading the series for the first time. So it's all spoiler-free, but established Potter fans are also welcome to join it.
I just won't test this podcast. This one, test. Do you want me to test it?
Okay. You just gotta get close and personal.
Hi, I'm Paula. My pronouns are she, her. I am the co-host of Creating Magic podcast that I'm with Dani, and our podcast is about fandom and just fandom love. It's like all fandoms.
Why nerds love things.
Yeah, why nerds love things. That's basically, and it's a conversational podcast where we just chat with other people.
Pretty much what you're hearing now is
Exactly.
us
It's
with
us.
occasional topics.
Exactly, with a lot of like
Crying, rabbit trail.
I never cry.
Did your nose just grow?
Not, yeah.
And then I am the other half of Creating Magic. I am Dani, she, her. And yeah, we're just it's transforming a little. We've done some other things. We have moved out of just Potter. We did a Bridgerton one recently.
Yes.
So we have some other plans for other things. We've also been covering a lot of like experiences and events. So that's been a lot of fun.
Oh, hello, magical friends. I am host witch Bess of WZRD Radio. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the closest thing I think there is to a music nerd up here at the moment.
And I'm Julianna. I'm from Puffcast Podcast, your Harry Potter happy place. Yeah. I liked that. That was very good. A good interpretation of the energy we put out in that podcast. I'm a wild human being. You're probably going to gather a little bit of that through this, or if you were just at the James Payton panel. But she, her, and we just talk about generally Harry Potter related things, and we have a lot of really great guests, and just talking about the things that we love to talk about that are Wizarding World related. So it's a great time.
Excuse me, Juliana, you have more than one podcast.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, I forgot. And Jeff is not here, but I also do Into the Fold, which you can find us doing a live recording of on Sunday here, actually. And it is about the Grishaverse, which if you've seen the Shadow and Bone series on Netflix, it's the book series that is based off of. And if you are a Harry Potter fan, which I assume many of you are, it is a book series that you would greatly enjoy. And we're going chapter by chapter, doing a book club style read through. So we invite you to join us. Cool. Thank you.
Cool, thanks.
And thank you, Dani, for reminding me that I have two podcasts.
I am just everyone's friendly Ravenclaw that makes sure we get all the information out.
You're such a good promoter for things, too. I love it.
I'm a promoter of other people's things. Promoting myself is really bad.
It's a challenge.
All right. So why don't we go with how each of us started getting into podcasting?
I can go first.
Go for it.
So I was actually just a fan of Creating Magic podcast. I was the podcast prefect.
You really were.
I really was. I was like, every time I would listen to an episode, I was like sharing it, and I was like, and then when she needed a new host, she asked me, and I was like, hell yeah. So now I'm like,
it's a little more than that, because I almost stopped the podcast.
Yeah.
Because I don't.
I feel like that's your story more than mine.
Well,
but, yeah.
I don't like doing things solo. It freaks me out. And Paula and I are just friends. She's like, I'll fill in. She just started like filling in just so I could have a person to bounce off of. And I was just like, why are we not like making this official?
Yeah. Well, that's how it happened. For me, at least.
Yeah. And for me, I'll continue on it, is that at Leakycon Boston, so our podcast has transformed a lot since its start. At Leakycon Boston, I was just like talking about how it was so fun, like meeting all these new people and people that created things, and I wanted the community to like start meeting the other members of the community. So it started out by interviewing like the artists and Artist Alley. Like half of the vendor hall has been on the podcast at some point. And it was just, we wanted to introduce why they were inspired to create these things, and it just came out of a conversation at Boston Leaky, and just from there it's just kind of grown and transformed. We're in season 4, so it's been 4 years since we did that.
Okay. So my podcast came about where I was having a discussion with someone who is an adult, and she was talking about how she thought she missed the boat when it came to Harry Potter, and she didn't read it as a kid. And I was like, no, like there's so much you can get out of it as an adult, probably more, since you like understand it, like more things. And she was like, yeah, I just, that's really fascinating. If I had like a guide like that, then I think I would be really into it. And I was like, I could be that guide. So I was already like an English class nerd for sure, and loved diving into literature. So it seemed like the perfect fit to do that, since there didn't seem to be a podcast like it at the time. So that's how I got into it.
Oh, I was just taking a sip of water. I'm sorry. So I started podcasting because essentially I was depressed. And then I started listening to MuggleCast, and I was like, oh, this is like a community. And I just found myself yelling in my car, saying random things, pretending I was part of the podcast without actually being part of the podcast, and decided it was probably time to start a podcast. And other tumultuous roads have led me to the point now with Pubcast and Into the Fold, just with other previous podcasts that shall not be named, just got me to the point where I was like, I want my own podcast. And my friend Mel and I started Puffcast like 3.5 years ago now, I think, just to create like a positive Harry Potter related space, just because, as you guys know, there's a lot of negativity out in the fandom, and also just because I like making friends. People may tell you that about me. I like to collect my friends. Hello, friends. And I just like interviewing people and seeing other people like you, Dani, who are like passionate. Like the people you bring on your podcast are like so passionate. You too, Paula. Like about what they do, and I love that. And I feel like the Harry Potter fandom is just like so awesome. And then Jeff with Into the Fold, pretty much, I told him one point we're going to do a podcast together, and then harassed him and said, we're doing Into the Fold. This is what it's called. I made a doc here. You're showing up on Saturday.
We have a podcast now.
Yeah, we have a podcast now, and they said okay, and that's pretty much Into the Fold. So that's the expedient version of that. So, and then Bess, you're the only one.
Oh dear. So you know that feeling when you say, I really wish this thing exists, and no one bothers to make it for you, so you have to do it yourself? I always wanted there to be a Wizard Rock radio show, like you could just tune in like people do on regular radio in their car, but I don't know how to build a radio transmitter. And Dani was starting a podcast at the same time as me, so I just sort of followed.
She was my emotional support podcaster. we were like, why are we would? I have messages of us just going, why did we do this to ourselves? We are introverts. We don't like speaking.
What is hosting? How does this work? And just I wanted the thing to exist, so I made it.
If you don't listen to Bess's podcast, you should. Do you guys know Delilah from the radio? Yeah. Every time you talk, I'm just like, it's ASMR. I'm like, she's like Delilah. Just, I don't care what you're talking about. You did the April Fool's episode where it was all Russian. I'm like, I don't know what she's saying, but I just need to listen to her.
The best part of that is that the April Fool's is never me. So that would have been another Wizard Rocker. I'm not sure who it was this year. But yeah, I bring in guest hosts who do it in foreign languages.
Oh, interesting.
Was this year the German one?
I just remember the first time you did it because it came on. I was like, what is going on?
See, I'm not the only host witch Bess. I'm just most of host witch Bess.
But either way, like, you are like a calming, like if you're ever really stressed, just put it on.
I will confirm, very calming voice, Bess.
Your ASMR.
Yeah.
Well, that's my time. Thank you.
She's accepting tips. Please send over Venmo. And Dani is currently dying.
Not currently dying.
It's nice to know you.
It's only been 3 months. We're good. Oh, thank you. All right. So, just glancing on. What advice do you have for people that want to start podcasting?
Ooh, talk to Dani.
I was just going to say, get yourself a Dani. She has all the answers.
They don't have all the the answers. I'm just a Ravenclaw that researches the heck out of everything.
She knows where everything is. She does.
Which is funny because you would think like Julianna, who in my mind isn't, because of her personality, I don't always think that you're like the most organized. But then when I'm
not.
But then when I'm on your podcast, I get a full sheet of breakdown. I'm like, I don't even send people.
I know when I was on their podcast, she sent me this thing, and I was like,
I guess.
I was like, how do you even do this? Are we not talking?
I'm an organized.
I was like, this is very complicated.
Yeah,
super organized.
She has an
super laid
outline.
out. Yeah.
I will send you the Zoom link 5 minutes before you're supposed to be on.
But truly, is anyone here considering it or like imagining it, or like I think it'd be really cool to have a podcast of
Mayuri.
So I have an idea and I started it, but every time I go to film it, it's just like not what I want. I get like really wrapped up in my own head, which is why I started a podcast 3 months ago and I haven't put out an episode yet.
Oh, okay.
The best advice I was ever given is just do it. Even if it sucks, just do it. Because once you get through that first episode, it's not easy, but it takes away a big weight from you of continuing.
One of the things when I made my podcast, because I think it's kind of a rite of passage in like your beginning podcasts, like the audio isn't great, and then like it gets better as you go. Like I re-listened to some of my first episodes, and I was like, oh my god,
it's hard
Don't do that. Don't listen to your first episode when you're like a year in.
One of the things that I made a promise to myself when I started my podcast was I am going to love what I put out no matter what. Doesn't matter if the quality like is not as professional as I would like it, I'm going to love it and I'm going to post it anyway. And that really helped me get over the insecurity of like, I don't have the best audio equipment. I know it doesn't sound great. You can hear the humming of whatever in the background. So that's one piece of advice I have.
I will say one of the coolest things I think about podcasting, and kind of going off of the just do it thing, is being able to watch people grow as you podcast more and more and have that audio to prove the growth that they've done. I mean, Dani, holy crap. Like, you've grown so much since I met you, like, 3 years ago now? Like, holy crapola.
I speak up more.
Yeah, like, well, significantly more. And, like, I can talk to about my co-host Mel, too. And, like, also you, too, Bess. I feel like you've grown a lot as well. Like,
you have heard my first episode.
Yeah, possibly. Jeff may or may not have shared that episode.
Oh.
We may or may not go after. But just being able to have that audio proof that you've had so much growth and now you have so much confidence in yourself just because you did it. And it's just amazing. And I think that if you start your podcast, you're also going to see yourself grow a lot and just gain that confidence that just comes with doing something repetitively over time. Like how well I am at saying words. Great at it. But it's just, I don't know, I just am stunned by how much, like, people like yourself, Dani and Bess, like, how much you guys have come out of your shells by just doing it and being a podcaster, and it's amazing.
You'll also learn the things that, like, annoy you about yourself.
Yeah.
Because I do all of our own editing. I now know anytime I say "so" before a sentence.
You learn your filler words.
Yeah, you learn your filler words and so like even in normal conversations, I'll like be talking to Paula and I'll be like, "Not so."
But practically,
Mine is like.
Oh yeah, I'm like too Paula.
Like. I'm from Miami, so like.
I went to a workshop once on how to podcast, and he was like, you need a soundboard and a really expensive microphone. And it's nonsense. The materials that you need are so I use Audacity, which is a free editing software.
Yes, we used to.
I use GarageBand, but at the beginning of my podcast, I sat on the floor of my bathroom because that was like the only place that didn't get outside noise from the street. So
You gotta do what you gotta do.
My library has podcasting booths you can use
Oh,
anytime
cool.
you want.
Oh, that's nice.
You can record on your phone. I have some of my April 1st hosts have just done it on their computer microphone. It doesn't. a podcast doesn't have to be polished, and it shouldn't.
The technology isn't what makes the podcast.
Yeah, it's the heart and feeling
So,
and the soul behind it.
This little mic I have in front of me, it's a $30 mic from Amazon. I've recorded this morning's panel. I'm recording this, and when I went to Literary Inc., it's the audio I used to release the entire episode. Nobody noticed. Nobody made a comment like, that was a little... No one noticed. Easy mic to carry around. Plugs right into my iPad.
Yeah.
Or your iPhone.
Or my iPhone.
Yeah, well, and like they said too, you can record right off your phone. I mean, things like Spotify for podcasters now, you can record right into that app. It's completely free, and you can even edit on the app and like add in like sound effects and stuff. And you don't need to pay a single cent. And it's, I would say, from that app, pretty accessible. But don't feel like it's out of your range or out of your price point to start a podcast, especially if you're really passionate about what you want to talk about. And I would guarantee you also that there's at least one or two other people out there who are just as passionate about something like, say, like Squoze, which is my favorite ship, Squid and Toast. There's at least one other fan fiction out there. Can't confirm. There's at least someone else out there who wants to hear what you have to say and really resonates with you. And that's what really matters at the end of the day, that you feel like you've connected with someone and made someone's day a little bit better, hopefully.
That's really what it comes down to, is like, if you are passionate about, don't choose a subject that you don't actually love. It's going to become work very quickly. It could be about anything, but make sure you're passionate about the topic and that it's something that you know you love. And don't be afraid that like at a certain point you might be like, this isn't for me anymore. There's no harm of trying something, making it a 10-episode series and being like, okay, I'm done. It's okay. Move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have made a little bit of a shift from like being more Harry Potter specific and like creator specific. Do you want to talk about that, Dani? How you kind of made more of a shift about being like specific to interviewing creators to being more of like a fandom inclusive podcast?
So I'm like stereotypical Barbie, but I'm stereotypical nerd. Paula's in her Barbie era, so I wanted to use that for you. But I am like stereotypical nerd Barbie, is that like I love all things nerdy, and even when I chose the name Creating Magic, knowing I didn't want to just stick with Potter, and that anything I love is, to me, it's magic. So like we did a Star Trek episode we've done, and it's just like things we're finding that we love.
Bridgerton.
Yeah, we did.
Has no witches or wizards.
Yeah, and even
it's
with
magical to me.
And with Bridgerton, we talked with Ryan and came out and we're like, oh, we want Ryan on the show again. Let's find something to talk about.
Ryan's
just because
amazing.
Ryan was fun to have on the show.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what it is. We're like, and people loved it. That's the only episode I've ever had people ask for the unedited version, which we will not release.
We'll not release that. Boy.
But
what about when we recorded with you? She had us read. I am traumatized.
I didn't sufficiently prep
Okay,
them.
first of all, I read Harry Potter as an adult because I'm 46. So when Harry Potter came out, I was already a fully fledged adult of drinking age, like my girl over here, Mela.
Shout out to the Humble Man.
So I read the books, loved it. It was the first time I loved a book series, a book at all. And so she had us do the Ministry of Magic.
I had them cover the chapters where Sirius dies.
I was like, what the hell?
But I didn't say...
The crier, exactly.
Yeah, I didn't prep them. I just said, these are the two chapters we're going over.
And I'm like, and then I go to Dani, I was like, you see what she has us reading? I'm like, what?
And the thing with Sarah is, if you haven't listened to her podcast, please go do it. But she deep dives. She finds connections. You're not just going, oh, he fell through the veil. You're going, do you know what the veil means in like Greek mythology? Like she's going down, and you're just like so crying more because you're finding out the reason.
Imagine me crying more.
In my defense, I was like, I don't think I can handle going over these two chapters by myself.
So she tortured two other people. She was like, I'm not going to do this alone.
She's like, but you know who will say yes to us?
Yeah. No, it was a good episode.
It was great.
And I was like, these people, because she has like a very like, hello, I am Sarah, like very like soothing, and I'm like, you're gonna have us on here like, what?
They don't even introduce themselves.
I know. We were like, hey, we're Dani, we're Paula, we're gonna hear. And then she starts talking, and we're like, oh my god.
You guys might send the Zoom link 5 minutes before you have to do actual homework to be on my podcast.
Yeah. I was like, what? I told Dani, I was like, do you know what this is? Do you know what these two chapters are?
Nope.
And then we realized that the visitors passes were the size of coins. I was like, I didn't remember that, and I was like, how do you put a full name on a coin?
They came out of the coin machine slot.
Rescue mission.
Rescue mission.
I was like, on a coin?
On a quarter,
Yeah.
essentially, because it's a phone booth.
But anyway, that was fun. Sorry.
Traumatized from.
Next time you should have us on for like, I don't know.
A happy episode.
The end of the sixth book.
We're wrapping up book 5 and moving into 6 and 7.
You know what episode? Do you want to know what's downhill from here? She's gonna be like, "Hey, Dobby's about to die. You guys need to come on this episode." That's what's gonna happen.
We should. It could be like our thing.
That's fine.
All right.
Well,
God,
you
you're already
got
traumatized. Oh, this
That'll be the ribbons you're all getting next year.
Dramatic Death Squad.
Anyway.
And with that, thanks for being awake.
So we all use hosting for our podcast?
Yeah.
Can you not?
I don't think you can not. I know like Square you can upload directly.
Yeah, I think you would have to have a website that just went to the website.
So like with the podcast you get a host and they essentially do all the work of sending it to all the places where it streams.
Yeah, otherwise you have to do it for each one by yourself.
Totally,
Which is a lot of work. So where does everyone host?
I started with Anchor, which is now
Spotify for podcasts. Yeah, same.
I'm on Libsyn,
I'm on
and actually that made me think of I have a very exciting announcement. WZRD keeps getting kicked off of Spotify. I've been on there for like 2 weeks now, so you can actually listen on Spotify. Do it while you can.
Oh, that's frustrating. And that's things you'll come up with, and like Stitcher's closing, which I randomly had a lot of people that used Stitcher for a while.
Yeah, we've had a few like people who just like they're like, I use this podcasting app, and I'm like, what is that?
Hope my host has that one.
Never heard of that. Cool.
Yeah, so like you can start podcasting for free. Don't listen to the people that say you need all the things. Just know what you want to talk about, but also be aware that like the inside joke you have with your best friend might not actually be a podcast. Because there's times we're like, we derailed. We're like, I can't put 3 hours of us talking in a podcast.
Yeah, I think another thing that we can talk about too is that there's the big misconception that podcasts are just talking and there's nothing else happening. There's no like social media, there's no editing, there's no like wrangling in guests, there's nothing like that. I think maybe just kind of maybe breaking that ceiling a little bit and saying that podcasting isn't just talking to your friends. Like there's a lot of work that goes behind it. I think we all kind of found out, maybe then the hard way, that it is a lot of work to bring in guests, to recruit people to do songs for you for a certain theme, Bess, to bring in...
That's pretty easy.
Oh, okay. That's easy. Never mind. Just kidding.
Coordinating time zones with guests.
Yes, time zones, or even like if you're doing something like you and Paula have been up to, Dani, more recently, like reviewing events and like getting yourself to the event to review the event. Like that's a whole nother production too. So does anyone have any like big realizations that they had when they started podcasting that were like, holy crapola, this is way harder than I thought it was?
Building in breaks. My podcast goes twice a month year round, and a lot of podcasts take like a summer break or a winter break, and I'm getting a little bit jealous of them because you need the time off, because even if it's something that's fun, it does become work eventually.
Yeah, I used to take August as a break and then December as a break. This year we took July because of Leakycon. I'm like, Leakycon's going to give me so many episodes. So I just switched it. And we used to be weekly, which I found to be too much. I couldn't do it. So right now we are bi-weekly, and we might add in a random bonus episode here and there if we have stuff we want to talk about. But like, don't be afraid to like change as it grows. That's also the thing. It's just like, because you committed to this on day 1 doesn't mean on day 30 you need to still do the same thing you did day 1. Because you kind of learn and move with it.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing there is just be communicative with your listeners. Like, as long as you let them know, hey, this is what the schedule is going to be going forward. We've never, and I'm sure you guys too, have never heard anyone who are like...
Does everyone see the cake?
Bailey!
And Bailey is the cake.
The cake arrived!
Yay! But Yeah, I've never had any listeners who are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you went from being four times a month to twice a month. How dare you do that?
Or like, I can't put out an episode because I don't have the time to edit. No one's going to be like,
no one's going to be
but
mad.
I was waiting at 5:10 a.m., which is the random time you release, to download the episode.
You get people who might be like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Like, you don't post for a while because they're like genuinely concerned about your health and safety and well-being. But no one is like, I'm never listening to you ever again because you did not post at 5:10 a.m. today.
My computer imploded last month, and an interview episode, so like someone else was actually counting on it, ended up being a week late because that's how long it took my computer to come back. But none of us are ever going to be like NPR podcasts, so you're never going to have strangers who expect things of you in that way. It's going to be people who think of you as a friend and who want to support you and appreciate what you're doing. So people are going to be like, are you still alive?
Yeah.
Is everything
Like, I haven't heard from you.
Yeah.
I have no internet, I'm sorry.
Well, because there's that like parasocial relationship that we form with people too.
A podcast literally builds a community. Like, I see other podcasters in here, like, they know it's a community. People see you, they know you.
Yeah, Sequoia's sitting there right in the middle.
You're right in the middle, and you're right at
Dead
the...
smack. Dead smack in the center of the.
I didn't want to just be like right there, but you know, because you've been. How many years have you guys been going?
6.
Yeah, so you've been going quite a while, and you have a huge community that supports around you, and like ours is growing, and we're learning it. But just remember that the people that listen to you. When I started the podcast, my theory behind it was I wanted people to hear it, and if they had walked into a coffee shop listening to us, wanted to feel like they can join. So it's the reason it's so conversational is because I want people to feel like they're there with us. And so we'll meet people that we had no idea listened to the podcast. I was at the Harry Potter New York store. The cashier recognized me by my voice. They don't see us a lot.
Yeah.
They just look at me like, why do I know you're... They're like, you have a podcast. I'm like, that's... weird. I didn't think people accept. No, because I'm like, that's weird. I thought only Paula listened to it.
But having that community also does come with responsibility. Coming from Wizard Rock in 2014, there was a bit of an implosion in Wizard Rock and YouTubing, where people who had power by virtue of being a band, by virtue of being a YouTuber, didn't realize how easy it was for them to exploit that power, and they became abusive and toxic relationships. So something you have to be aware of as you grow is that you can't just treat everyone as your friend anymore. Like, you have responsibilities, which we have a series on in the Wizrockopedia if you want to learn more.
Yeah, well, I think especially it's because of the fandom that we're in right now and all the controversy that's happened around this specific Harry Potter fandom, and she who shall not be named and may be burned somewhere where we don't want her, never see her again. It's something that we've all had to address in our podcast and just state our views towards like what JKR has been saying, because we do get a lot of people too, and I know I've gotten some guests too who are like, hey, I'm like, hey, do you want to be a guest on the show? And they're like, if you support JKR, they outrightly say like, if you support JKR, we do not want to be associated with you. And then you have to go and tell them like, hey, no, we don't. So we're supporting the community. We are definitely not supporting the author. And I don't know, have you guys had any challenges with that, or do we want to speak to that a little bit, like how hard it is with all those changes coming through?
I know I'm constantly worried about losing friends and becoming unpopular and eventually becoming, part of like a Twitter pile-on, because it is such a fine line you have to walk, going to the parks or seeing the Fantastic Beasts movie, not Fanatical Fix, go listen to them. Gives a message, because that is still providing support to the author. And you have to be sort of comfortable with people outside the fandom just looking and going, oh, Harry Potter, you're bad. You have to think a lot about what your actions look like. As a fandom, we're losing a lot of creators of color and queer creators. And as the people with the power and responsibility, weird as that feels to us as not, but we are positions of power now, and it's up to us to protect those voices and ensure that it's a safe space. Sorry, I'm the fun one on the panel.
Go ahead. No, you are right.
And I think you're touching on stuff that we all think about, right? And you're like saying it out loud, which is super important. I've said it like on my personal account, how it's been hard for me to even how it's been hard for me to keep sharing like Harry Potter stuff, just because I don't want anybody to think that I'm like her. So that's all. Let me stop before I start crying.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm the crier.
Well, I think Bess might have tissues for you.
I had hopes. It was almost there.
A long time.
Huh? I know. It's been 30 minutes. That's pretty good for me. So, oh my God, thank you.
And it's part of like why it's not the reason I'm adding other fandoms. I'm adding other fandoms because I'm a nerd and I love things and I just want someone to talk about Star Trek with. Like, but like even before Paula was our my co-host, I have always, when people are in a demographic that I don't fall into, I always offer up our space. We had Paula on with I'm going to get the name wrong, Magical Minorities.
Yeah.
Oh, you're Masterful Magical.
That one, yeah.
I was like,
so, and like I will always offer our space because I don't feel like I can always speak to circumstances, but I will always offer our space to someone that has better words than I can relate to.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just being open to embracing what you don't know and letting the people know, like, hey, JKR might stand for this, but like we want to learn. We're willing to learn, and we want to bring people on that are going to teach our listeners about something. And just, I have the idea is that like the biggest practical joke that we've ever played on JKR is the fact that her fandom is exactly what she like thinks, like the opposite of what she wants us to be. We are like queer, we are weird, we are fans, we are loving each other, and that's the exact opposite of what she preaches. And I think it's just like the biggest like fuck you, honestly, to her. And I love it. I think it's great. The more people I learn, like I meet people in the fandom, like the more I'm like, we are so polar opposite from everything that this woman stands for, and she just needs to go suck it.
Yes.
That's it. That's all it comes down to. Because we're based off of love. These books are based off of love.
And the community is about the people. Like, I know we all love the books, but when it comes down to it, Leakycon specifically, I don't come here to talk about Harry Potter. I come here to see you guys.
Yeah.
I'm here to see my friends.
I'm here to see Doug Whitmore.
Hi, everyone, this is Doug.
It's his first time cosplaying, and he's loving it. He hates us right now.
You can follow him on Instagram, hero dot Hogwarts.
No blood crunches.
Oh man, come on.
I know we're still like not quite close to them. Does anyone have any questions or? Oh no. That was just like a stare of like my soul.
I wonder if you guys can talk about what you do to source guests, where you find them, and how you vet them.
That's a good question. Do you want to go first, Dani and Paula? Because I feel like you guys are the queens of guests.
The queen of guests? She's telling us that we're the queen of guests. So for us,
it's our friends.
It's our friends, basically. Yeah. We've had several.
You've been on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna get Tom on one day. But yeah.
This is how we source our guests.
Yeah.
For Dani's recording later, it's about half the audience.
Yeah. But Dani also does. Dani does most of the like reaching out to experiences and all that stuff. I can't take credit for like any of that. I'll show up for an interview and chat it up. But
it's not out yet. But like I have been trying to push like for getting. I still at my heart love why people create things. So the Cauldron Pub's having their after party tonight. I have an episode, it just hasn't released because we were waiting for them to make an announcement about something that we talked about. I got the opportunity to meet the co-founder, and it was just reaching out. How I reached out to him, I found his LinkedIn page and saw he was an AmeriCorps alumni, and guess who's also an AmeriCorps alumni? And I was like, hey, and I had gone out to London and he invited me to the studios, and it's how I'm going over to the Cauldron Pub this weekend too. Like, it's just, don't be afraid to reach out. You might not hear back. I reached out to the Cauldron Pub 3 years ago when the podcast started, and their response is, we are making sure we are not related to Harry Potter or the Wizarding World because of what we do. We don't want we're not part of who they are. Great. well, we expanded, and so I reached out again this year and was like, hey, I'm coming to London. We are now we're covering a lot of experiences. We did the Forbidden Forest, we do conventions, we've done a bunch of stuff, and it just opened it up. And just when you reach out to people, especially if they're like businesses or organizations, explain who you are and what your podcast is, because even if you send them the link to your episode, they're most likely not going to listen to it. And you never know who's going to respond. I, on a whim, was like, it would be really cool to have someone from Funko on the podcast. I sent an email and got them on.
Yeah.
I've had friends who have sent the same email and have not been able, they don't even get a response. I'm like, I don't know. I sent it at the right time that someone's email box was empty.
It was probably like it popped up and they were like, oh, let me check this.
So don't be afraid to search it out. And the other thing I do is if it's not someone I know, and our dear friend Instagram shows us who has mutual friends, I find out my friends that know them and ask.
Yeah, I think that one of the big things that you talk about, Dani, is like just asking. There are so many people who are like,
it's the hardest part.
Yeah, they're like, how did you get like this interview, or how did you do this? Like, literally, I just asked them politely. Like, there was literally nothing crazy or weird.
Magic?
I looked instead, like, Googled their name or found them on a page where they're really active, got them through their most active like social or email thing, and just said, hey, this is my podcast. We'd like to have you on. We love what you do. Thanks.
Basically, be a stalker.
I am a professional stalker. Thank you very much of many people.
And like, if you know someone that has had them, ask. We're all very open.
Yeah.
I do not give out personal emails that I have gained out of things, but I'll be willing to make a connection.
Yeah.
So, and that's something even with phone numbers. If I have a friend that's like, I know you have Paula's phone number, can you give it to me? I'm like, no, but I'll tell Paula that you're trying to contact them. I never want to be that they're like, oh, Dani gave that out, and then get out, and then no one responds to me anymore.
Well, yeah, you got to respect people's boundaries and their own personal like.
But it takes work. I'll email the same company. I won't, not every day of the week or anything, but like a few months will pass. I'm like, we'll try again, because you just released something that's really cool, and I'd love to talk about it.
Oh yeah, sometimes you just got to hit him at the exact right moment. Or like someone makes a quick connection. I'm just honestly thinking of like Sequoia when you and Kim were on with us on podcast. Like literally, someone was like, "You should have these people on it." You guys like responded, and we were like immediately like, "Yes, okay." Sending them a DM right now, because like it was just like that exact moment was just like that was the moment it called for. And sometimes that's just what you got to do. You got to act in the moment and just like go for it and just stick your neck out there. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people are most scared to do is like literally just ask.
The worst thing they could say to you is no. And most of the time they just don't respond. So
yeah.
Nobody's saying no to you. They're just not saying not right now.
I know I've talked to two of you on this panel about this because I'm pushing you. As a podcast, you are considered media. I get into events and we get to go to things because we are press. I talk to the CEO of things because we are press. Don't be afraid to accept that you are part of media. We are here as media. I'm looking at...
I know. Next year. I just forgot on, I guess, honestly. Dani knows I'll ask almost
like,
anything.
if you want to create a media kit, just message me. We'll help you through it. I will edit things. I will check your spelling.
She's very good at that.
I will also send you my ribbons every year at Leakycon to 3 different people to make sure I didn't spell anything wrong or got a quote wrong. So.
Can confirm.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the best things I think about like being part of this community too, is like we're so supportive of each other too, in that like if you ask me for something, if I can't answer your question, I'm more than happy to like pass you on to the next person I know can do that. And I know all you guys here up on this panel too are willing to just like be like, hey, like I might not be able to answer your question, but let me just pass that off to Dani because I know that she can answer your question a lot better because like I don't know anything about cosplay and I made this really janky chocolate frog costume, but she makes
no, it is glorious.
Listen, we talked about it this morning.
You're gonna have to play leapfrog. If anyone wants to play leapfrog after this panel,
oh yeah, we still have to play leapfrog, so we're probably gonna videotape me leaping down the hallway. So stay tuned.
One good jump.
I only get one good jump and I already used it. Oops. So these are all gonna be pretty bad jumps.
And also, like, if you're starting something, let us know. We will have you on. Like, we want to promote our friends.
Yeah.
It's really, like...
And you're all our friends now.
Whether you like it or not.
It may not be coming across, but I have a heavily medicated severe anxiety disorder. So doing stuff like this is really hard. Reaching out to guests is really hard. I have cried after sending emails and before sending emails and during sending emails.
Are you me?
You found your long lost twin, Paula?
I don't know.
It doesn't necessarily get easier to do the reaching out, but you do sort of learn the form of it. The email that you can even start just copy pasting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, making a form.
Just make
that
sure you
can-
change the names.
Yes. I've made that mistake.
And meet Dani, because Dani will say things like, you should be on my panel. And no, I don't think you sound dumb when you say that. So you need support networks. So there's Spouse, who comes and sets up technology for me to be more accessible.
Yeah, and we can't all be great at everything. I think that's the best part about like having people who help you with your podcast or having a co-host. Like I know I'm the more chaotic energy of my podcast, and I bring that. And I'm also the person who brings in the guests too, because I love to make friends. And my co-host Mel, she's like a lot more quiet, and she'll just like do the editing and do her thing. But I hate editing, so I'm very thankful for that. So I think just finding a combination that works, and like even with like you, Bess, and the Slither Spouse, just finding like, okay, I'm not too great at technology, but he is, so I can rely on them for that. And like you and Paula, Dani.
She's my podcast emotional support
That's it.
extrovert.
She does all the editing. She does all the reaching out.
You have kids.
I
Yeah.
have kids.
And it's okay if you
Don't have kids.
I think some of it might be too late for some of these people.
I know it might be, but I warned you.
And it's okay if your podcast is weird. Like, I don't think I could get in somewhere as a media company because all I do is play Wizard Rock and tell people about upcoming events.
But if there's an event that has Wizard Rock, you could.
I mean, I got into a King Tut thing telling them I had a Harry Potter podcast. So. I don't know what you're talking about.
And I can't necessarily do, like, cross-promotion the way other podcasts do because I don't do interviews with
I want to start being your commercial. Can I be on a commercial of your show?
I do run commercials on the radio station, so absolutely.
We're
Yeah.
going to make our own commercial.
But you will still find ways to, it takes a lot of brain power sometimes, but you will still find ways to make those connections if you want them and if they're important. But don't do the things that aren't fun.
Yeah.
Like social media is, you know, the be all end all, but I hate TikTok. So I go on twice a year.
I
Paula's
love
like a
TikTok.
TikTok pro.
Do you want
Yeah,
to do
I don't-
TikTok?
Maybe. Can it be weird? That's the.
I mean,
do
we're all
Wizard Rock.
Florida.
Oh, this is true. Sorry. But look, going back to like the King Tut thing, Dani's dream is to get in at this NASA thing, and she's like, "Space is magic. I don't care what anybody says." She's like, "I'm getting in." She's
Space is magic. Nerds that like space started because they like Star Trek and Star Wars because they were stars. Therefore, my podcast should go to the
Yeah, she's like, "I'm getting in on that NASA
I'm
thing."
really good at coming up with how to get you into things if you don't necessarily.
She's like, it's like 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but 7 degrees of whatever it is you're trying to get to.
I'm really good at this.
Were there other questions? Did we just like
I know, I
deviate?
know.
Yeah. Does
Totally
anyone
like-
have any?
I think we just jumped off Sequoia's question and really like,
Totally.
dove to the bottom of the pool and did not.
And
come
this
back
is
up.
Is that a frog reference?
Ribbit.
at least for Julianna and us too. This is how our podcast is.
Yeah,
like this.
Chaotic energy all around.
Hannah.
Who would be your dream guest?
Matthew Lewis. Oh my God. Or Pedro Pascal. Oh my God.
I was gonna say Pedro Pascal for you, Paula.
But Matthew Lewis, you know, for Harry Potter, but Pedro Pascal, oh yeah. Space Poppy. Alright, go on. Who would be your dream guest?
No, I have to think about that.
Gary Olson. Oh, I'm just kidding.
Does anyone
Michelle
here?
Obama?
Ooh.
I don't know what she has to say about Harry Potter right now.
They do a deep dive
episode on all of the Malfoys with Jason Isaacs.
That would be
Oh,
fun.
that'd be fun.
Does anyone here listen to Wizard Rock or is? Oh, wonderful. So in the early days, there was a band called the HMS Wolfstar, who wrote 2 songs for a school project and vanished. No one knows their names. We're pretty sure they were European, and that's it. If I could get them on, that would be the coup of a century.
You know what would be a great guest? If we could find out who wrote My Immortal and bring that person on. That is like peak chaotic energy right there, and I am living for that.
I would never want to know. The mystery is so much more fun.
But they could still like go with like a pseudonym or something.
Chuck
or like,
Tingle it with the
yeah. That way we can still
With like the voice changing thing.
still a mystery.
The big shadow. Oh my god, I would love that episode.
Well, there's your April Fools.
Yeah, maybe look forward to that from Puffcast next
What about
year.
you, Danny?
When I think about like interviewing people, I always think of like how they would work on the podcast. So like,
I didn't even think about that.
I mean, Pedro Pascal's a good speaker.
and I always think about it because I'm like, oh, I would love to. Why would I have this person on? I don't want to just talk about them being in the movie. So like, I would love to have Chris Franken on because he's so part of the community, and that's what I want to talk about. My other top person I would love to get on, it's never gonna happen, is Will Wheaton because I love everything he does.
Yeah.
Like his conversations on like mental health and just his journey. I just want Will Wheaton on a podcast.
Love that. What is Will Wheaton in?
I just started watching Big Bang.
He's like, what is Will Wheaton?
I'm
Wesley
very...
Crusher from Star Trek Next Generation.
know who
He is
Will
also
Wheaton
in
is.
Big Bang Theory. He's
Yeah,
Sheldon's
Big Bang.
enemy.
He's a big name nerd.
Okay.
But I only know Will Wheaton
he's a
from
geek.
Big Bang Theory. Big Bang Theory. That's the only reason I know who he
I was
is.
saying that 20 times fast, follow Big Bang.
He is King of the Geeks.
Okay, that makes sense, and that checks out.
I'm gonna send you a YouTube clip that makes you cry that he's talked about being a nerd, and you'll be done.
You know what? I love to cry. My favorite Christmas song is the Christmas Shoes song because it makes you cry every single time. The one guy just got posted going, it was great.
I've never heard this song. I probably should have listened to it.
No, don't listen to it, Paula. You will,
I'm here like, how do you cry about a shoe? Like,
it's very sad. Don't listen to it. But
That's enough from you.
I like emotions. I'm a Hufflepuff. Hi.
any other questions?
I think. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Our friends from We Are Wizards.
I can't make it with it.
I can't
I just getting general advice about like putting yourself out there, building an audience and stuff. Like we've done a lot of social media, we've tried some things and haven't really gotten a lot of an audience, and it's also sort of soul crushing. And I just like I always try to tell people like, oh, we've got this podcast, you should listen. And I don't know how to say that in a way that's not weird and that is effective.
Yeah, go for it, Paula.
So I think that you can't, nothing happens overnight, right? So you just have to do it. You have to do it because you love it, not because you want people to listen to it or whatever. Just keep doing it, and eventually you'll hit your people.
Do you know the classroom concept?
No.
So when we hear about podcasts, we think of the ones that have like 10,000 listeners a month, right? But if there were 30 people in a room staring at me while I did WZRD, that would be a lot. This is a lot of people. I think you can't, without being incredibly general as a podcast, you have to cherish your community.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Paula too, where it's just like you can't force it. I mean, from Puffcast, we've tried to force it, and like I have been the person on the train being like, "Let's do all these things," and then it just leads us back to right where we were. And I think it's
not natural growth if you're trying to force it.
Yeah.
And the other thing, it's about the people. You can do all the posts, but if you're not connecting with the people. Before she was my co-host, Paula was my biggest cheerleader. I can guarantee half of my listeners came because Paula was my biggest cheerleader. The people. She's still always my biggest cheerleader. The people that love your stuff will share it, and that is why you'll get followers, not necessarily because of anything you do.
It's because somebody that loves what you're putting out is sharing what they love hearing from you. So just keep doing it. Don't give up.
And for transparency, when I started, it was, I think, about 30 people listening to every episode. And now, 3 years later, almost 4, it's about 200. And that feels incredible. And I think that's the entirety of Wizard Rock. I don't think there's any more Wizard Rock listener in the world.
And also, like, coming at it from, like, a marketing standpoint, like, because I totally feel what you're saying about social media just not really getting any traction. One of the things that really sucks about social media, but also can be a little bit of a relief, is that no one really understands the algorithm. None of us, like, even when it's working, you don't really know why it's working. So going along with that, like just kind of accepting like there's no real way to crack that, but like if you're still putting content out, like that's like really the only thing that you can do, and just to, like they were saying, just keep at it, but take the pressure off of yourself of this isn't going viral, this only got X amount of likes, etc., etc. Because like I work in marketing, I've seen TikToks that like will do terribly until 3 weeks later when TikTok's like, hey, I'm gonna push this, and then all of a sudden it gets like 10K, and then the next one you post gets 200 views. Doesn't make sense. We will never get it. So just like take that burden, like try to take that burden off of your shoulders and just like make content that you like, because over time it'll help. And also, your social media isn't necessarily representative of like how many listeners you actually have. Like I don't post that often on First Year's Instagram, and I'm trying to change that. But like, say each post only has like 10 likes, I can look at my podcast analytics and be like, wait, 170 people listened to the last episode. Like, they don't necessarily directly correlate, especially with like, not everybody's on Instagram, not everyone's following on TikTok. Well, like, they probably are getting a notification that you've uploaded. It's not, one isn't necessarily representative of the other.
Yeah, and I think too, like one of the things that I've gathered from this is that I am sure you guys have gotten this too, like emails from people who have listened to you for a while, and they'll like tell you some really touching stories, and they're like very devoted listeners, but you've just never heard of them before because they're not on any kind of social media, but they've been like actively listening to your podcast like since the get-go, and then you'll just get like a book line like of an email from them being like telling you all their feelings and everything about all your podcasts and how much you mean to them and everything, which is really, really nice. But that's someone who like, they're not influenced by social media, they just found your podcast organically, or someone told them about it, and they're one of like probably your loyalist followers. They're just not someone who really is
or who you
socials.
see, right? You don't see them.
Yeah, you don't see them.
Yeah.
I mean, you think of the percentage of people that you interact with on socials, like you said, and are actually show up to listen, it's minute. It's the people who are listening, and because they love what you're doing.
Another option, is come to a panel, ask a question, and then the panelists will say, that's Why Can't We Be Wizards? They play tabletop RPG based at Hogwarts. They're very good. You should all listen to them.
Yeah, everyone go listen to them.
And come to Leakycon and then go to the Wizarding Wireless Collective table, and you can find all the podcasts.
Wonderful pamphlet.
Yeah.
Beautiful pamphlet.
I learned about some new podcasts today too. I was very excited.
And it's also like, we all get caught up in numbers. We've all been there. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it's that one person that got something and it just helped them get through their day that mattered.
Yep.
So it might be the 100 people listen, but it's that one person that we have someone here that has been listening since the beginning. I see him every time we go to this event, to Uncelebration, and I love it. And he will always tell me, after the cosplay panel, he came up to me and found me, and he's like, I can see how much you have grown since the beginning. And that means a lot more to me than knowing that 500 people listen to an episode. Knowing that we have people that have been with us since the beginning and they see us as their friends.
Yeah, I mean, if you can make one person smile or make someone just feel validated by listening to just one of your episodes, and that's the only thing you get back from that one episode, your job is done. Like, you did your job and you did it well.
And that doesn't mean you have to have serious topics on your episode.
No. We're talking about like,
you can have a cheesy joke from Julianna that makes someone's day.
I mean, me and Sequoia when I was on her podcast but Make It Scary, we did Camp Rock and we made it scary, and like,
Have you ever met a cow?
Do you like hamburgers, Sequoia?
And talking like analytics and numbers, again, I'm being very embarrassingly transparent here since I have no idea what any of y'all's are. In the early days, I was obsessed with like numbers as well. And I have a Patreon, and it pays for my hosting, and it supports the ESL Witches Fund, which you should apply to if you want to be a Wizard Rocker. And the general consensus is about 1% of your listeners will donate funds, become a Patreon, buy your merch. My number is more like 10 to 15%, because it's the quality and dedication of the community and the listeners that you develop that makes the difference there.
I mean, it's the thing is too with like Patreon too, people expect it to like, it's gonna like just like pay for all your bills automatically and things like that when they start them, and it's
We don't make money as podcasters.
Yeah.
Don't go into it expecting you're going to blow up
Yeah.
and you're going to be able to I would love to quit my job, but no.
Me too.
And you probably could live like 2 or 3 days on the money that you make off your podcast, and then you'd be just like,
I don't make any money. I'm in the
Julianna,
negative.
what are you doing to live 2 or 3 days on your podcast?
I'm in the negative.
Kids.
You know how many
I don't
snacks
have
they eat in the summer?
Oh my God!
don't
It
have
has to be
kids.
cheaper to send your kids to summer camp than it is to keep them home because I cannot afford to feed these kids.
You still have to feed them if they go to camp.
Oh, I still have to feed them, yeah. But they're not constantly eating. Anyway, that's off topic. Sorry.
did we have any other questions?
How do you approach tackling subjects on your episodes that maybe you don't represent or you don't know a whole lot about? Do you bring in guests to talk about it, or?
I find people who have the right voice for that situation.
Yeah, you don't want to stand in for people who you don't fully
I don't want to
understand.
speak for people that I am not in that group. That's not my job. It sounds very like pandery almost, and like very like thoughts and prayers type of situation. So find the people that can speak to it, and as I said, like we offer up the space. I don't even have to be on it. Now, will I listen to it before I release it because make sure it's something I want to release? Yes. I'm not saying give them free will and let them post it on their own, but you have a platform and you want to use it in a way to help others. And some people don't have that platform, not because and some people just don't want that platform, but sometimes want a space to be able to share it, and we have access to that.
Don't tackle things that you're not comfortable with. There are other resources you can point people to. You don't have to reinvent the wheel on your own podcast.
Yeah, like if you don't feel comfortable talking about something, yeah, like exactly what Bess said, just like find the best resource you can and just direct them that way, whether it be a person or a website or another podcast maybe that has done like I know I've like had some specific episodes that I've directed people to. I'm like, hey, this episode that they did on this podcast was really great and explained like X, Y, and Z. I can't speak to it, but please go listen to episode X, Y, and Z from this podcast. And they can speak to it very well. So I think that, yeah, just knowing where your boundaries lie is a big thing.
All right. Any other questions before we wrap up?
And hop on out of here.
So before we hop on out of here, it's so Julianna.
Sorry, I had to do that.
It's okay. It's just so you.
Required fun.
Why don't you share where you can be found in your socials for everyone?
First years, you can listen to wherever you get your podcasts, and then our social media handle is @firstyearspod. And then if you want to find me personally on Instagram and TikTok, I am Verita Saraham, so VERITASARAHM. And that's where you can find me.
I never spell my handle because sometimes I'm not sure I can spell it. You can find me at unpenceivable, so unpenceivable. I'm not going to try to spell it because the I and the E, forget it. Anyway, it is spelled correctly, but you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitch, because I'm a gamer now. And obviously on Creating Magic Podcast, which you can find on TikTok and Instagram. And I'll let Dani open
And then you can find me at Mandrakes and Mischief on Instagram outside of the podcast.
And on Twitch, because she's a gamer too.
Yeah, we're gamers now, y'all. Disney Dreamlight Valley.
Yeah.
And I think all of us release on pretty much all the things.
For now, until Spotify kicks me off.
Yeah, until you're kicked off of a platform, you're released on all the things.
WZRD Radio Pod everywhere. The website has transcripts and full episodes. You can listen to and read them there. Also at the Wizarding Wireless Collective table over in that marketplace. The closest marketplace.
Yeah, it's in a that way direction.
I haven't even been in the marketplace yet.
What's so funny?
She said a website.
was like,
I'm like, I forgot we had a website.
Oh. And what's the website for Creating Magic, Dani?
CreatingMagicPodcast.com.
Nice. So I am at Julianna, like grape jelly, _runs for my personal social media. I have my 2 podcasts, Puffcast, which is your Harry Potter happy place. That's pretty much at Puffcast Pod across all socials. And then we have Into the Fold, which is about the Grishaverse with myself and Jeff. And if you'd like to come to a live recording of that, that is at 1:15 on Sunday. And that can be found at Into the Fold Pod on all socials as well, too. So.
And I'd love to get these two podcasts, since they must have info.
Yeah, let's give a shout out. So,
let's get your info.
What do we have?
Is that back there?
For Why Can't We Be Wizards, we're at Why Not Wizards on Instagram, Twitter.
At Why Not Wizards.
And whycan'twebewizards.com is where all our stuff is.
And whycan'twebewizards.com.
Like why?
Why can't we?
And who are you? Do we know you?
Yeah.
Yeah, Fanatical Fix, and where to find them is a Harry Potter fan fiction podcast. It can be found wherever pods are cast, and at Fanatical Fix on Instagram, fanaticalfix.com.
Thanks.
And please come to the Wizarding Wireless Club.
Yeah.
Yes.
A bunch of shows being represented there. So
Yes.
it's very cool.
Yeah, if you didn't get our handles there, that's where you're going to find all of us.
Yeah, Sequoia and Kim
And
did
our
a
new baby
fabulous job.
podcaster.
My podcast is Building Crafty Notions, so you can find me on all the platforms. I have an intro episode out.
Hey!
And we'll have a new episode next week, right?
Nice.
Sure.
You will.
And I am also on socials as Building Crafty Notions. And I also have a YouTube because the intention is to build crafts with the podcast over top.
Building crafty notions.
Nice.
That sounds amazing.
Thank you.
That sounds like fun. We all love to craft.
Thank you guys all for coming.
Yes,
Yeah, thanks for listening. I think